What's something that you think an entrepreneur would find scary? I will be sharing 4 things that entrepreneurs find scarier than ghouls, so we can do a little scary session today. Notice that we have a lot of fears as entrepreneurs. We have decided to go on this journey of entrepreneurship, and it's not easy. It's freaking scary. Speaking of scary, I just watched the latest Jordan Peele movie, Nope. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. It's definitely one that I would watch again for sure. All right, so the first one that I have is not making enough sales. So basically going out of business. This fear is one of the biggest fears that any entrepreneur has when they first start the business. The thought is, will anybody buy? Will anybody actually pay attention? What if I market to my entire network and then no one buys? I don't know anybody else. How am I gonna get this business off the ground? What if I spend all of my money? And now, not only have I tried and I put myself out there and I really, really wanted to do this, but I have nothing to show for it. I don't even have money. This is a big fear. This is something that, honestly, it hits everybody. I was scared about this when I first started my business. So the very first business that I started was actually a multi-level marketing business, believe it or not. It's kind of like, I call it like the gateway. It's like the gateway drug for entrepreneurs, the MLM. Because generally speaking, it's one of the easiest ones to get started, right? Usually it's a friend or a family member that talks about it to you. You decide, okay, this looks easy enough. They look like they're doing well, so let me go ahead and get started. You don't have to come up with a unique selling proposition because they already have it. You don't have to figure out the client avatar because they already know it. Essentially, all you have to do is follow the steps, go to the meetings, stay motivated, and you'll be successful. At least that's the idea of it. And I was all in, like I drank the Kool-Aid. I was told I needed to cold call, talk to everybody in my network, and so I did it. I don't know if you can still do this, but basically what I did was I went to, there's this website where you could go to, you could buy and download a list of leads. So I went and downloaded a list of leads. I cold called every single person on that list. So it's not like I wasn't trying, right? I was actually doing the work that needed to be done. I ended up alienating several of my friends. So if some of you guys have been through this, then you understand. I exhausted my entire network and I started going through that cold call list. I got one person and I remember thinking, like I immediately did the math in my head. I've always been a person that's able to see the vision. Even though I'm not necessarily a math person, I was like, okay, great. It took me this many phone calls to get this one person. So if I do that many phone calls again, I'll get the next person. And I only need to get 5 people, right? And then I got to get my 5 to get 5, but I only need to get 5 people. This was my first time in business. So I didn't have those fears that a lot of people have because not only was I young, but I had never really done business before. My assumption was anyone else who's saying that they didn't succeed is because they just didn't try. I'm different. I got this, right? So I did everything and I was like, oh, great, I got this one person. I remember we were at my uncle's, he was having a birthday party at Maggiano's and she got back to me, the girl got back to me. I went to the bathroom to go take the phone call and she was like, yeah, I'll sign up. And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, this is great. Like I'm gonna get my 5 and I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna have, I did the calculations, I'm gonna have this much money, whatever. And long story short, her purchase actually fell through because she didn't really know what she was getting. Like I just followed the script and it was very much like, all you have to do is this and we've got such and such celebrity that's backing us. And I wasn't selling the product, I was selling the business. After that, I just kind of felt a little bit down. I started feeling that disappointment that people who have been there, done that, experience and they understand it, and that's why they don't just step into business lightly. After that experience, I really felt like, okay, I'm just gonna go the traditional route. So I'll go get a job, I'll work my way up in the company, and then I'll become a CEO. That's how I'll fulfill that need inside of me to be in charge, to be an entrepreneur, to be calling the shots. And as I was going through that process and as I was doing that, I got my very first corporate job and I realized, okay, I'm now proving to myself I don't like this. I don't like the structure that's in place. And also I don't like the fact that I can't really question things. Like, why is this way? Why can't we do it this way? And like, for example, why do I have to be at work from 7 to 7 just to show the people that I'm working with that I work hard? If I can get my work done in a shorter time frame, like why wouldn't you want me to go home on time? Didn't make sense to me. And even while I was there, I had created this spreadsheet and formula where not only was I able to like cut my work down, my personal work down, but I was able to save time across other functions as well, because I questioned and I saw a way to do things better. So I didn't really like the fact that the structure of the corporate world, and that company in particular, wasn't conducive to my personality. And I knew, okay, I have to be the one that's in charge. Next time I went into business, I had those fears. I had the same fears. I suddenly had these fears that I didn't have before. What if it doesn't work? And so this time I was like, this is when I took my personal finance blog full time. This time I said, okay, great. I'm going to make sure I have savings. I'm going to pay off my debts, and I'm going to do everything I'm supposed to do. So I saved up 6 months of savings. I paid off all of my credit card debt. I still had student loan debt, but I knew that it was flexible enough because it was federal, that if push came to shove, something happened, then I wasn't gonna be out on the street, so to speak. And I left my full-time job. I remember I quit on Friday the 13th, and my boss looked at me and he said, wow, you picked a hell of a day to quit. And I was like, well, I'm good. I'm gonna ride off in the sunset with my business. And even though I had a little bit of fear, I still was like, okay, this is gonna work, this is gonna happen. And a couple months later, I was back into a full-time job because I couldn't quite make that business work financially. And so when people have these fears of, what if I go out of business? What my point of sharing these stories is to let you know that it's likely to happen. From my experience, 2 out of 3 businesses that I've had have basically gone out of business. And the reason that this is important is because even though it's a fear that you might have, it's not unfounded. And the goal is, you have to understand, the fear shouldn't stop you from moving forward. The only thing you can really do is put things in place. And even if you put those things in place, it still might not work. Like, I put that 6 months of savings in place, and I went through all 6 months of savings, and I still had to go back to a job. The third time I decided to quit my full-time job and take my business full-time, this was the time I essentially burned the bridges, burned the boats. And I didn't have savings saved up. I had one client, and that client was essentially covering my expenses, my personal expenses. So basically, like, everything that was coming in the business, I was taking out for my personal expenses. And I remember saying, like, this time I'm going to make it work. What did I do wrong the last time? And the last time I said, well, maybe I didn't have a mentor. So I hired a mentor, I bought a couple of courses, and I've been self-employed since that time, which is October 2015. So it's been like 7+ years now. And the only reason that I was able to do that is because I didn't let those fears stop me from trying again. So even though this is a fear that you might have, my point is, and my encouragement to you is that it only takes one, like, you only need that one business to do well. And even with this business, I will say that it's still not necessarily the success that I see. Like, I still have this vision of the success that I want for a business. And this is still a stepping stone for me. I still feel like this is like level 1. The first business, I got knocked out, right? I got finished, like Mortal Kombat. The second business, I was still in there, but I got knocked out again. And the third business, I feel like, I'm still fighting and I'm still in the round, but this is not me like Rocky on the top of the mountain. So let's go into the second thing that entrepreneurs find scarier than ghouls. I put on here, getting a bad review. Is this something that you've ever considered? Like, what if somebody looks up your name and they suddenly see, LaTisha Styles scam? What if you happen to type your name in and you find someone who's written a bad review, or someone who says that you scammed them, or that they didn't get what they were expecting from you? This is definitely a valid fear. With all of these fears, what I'll say is that you have to understand that the fear is not going to go away. So the point of this is not to say, okay, here's how we get rid of those fears. The point of this is to say, here's how we mitigate the outcome, right? The thing that you're scared of, here's how we actually mitigate that. Here's how we prevent as much as we can from happening. And so the number one thing that I'll say that you need to put in place is setting expectations, especially when you're a coach and you're providing some sort of service. Like, it's not a product. For example, if I sell a mug and I say, when you spend $25, you're gonna get this mug. If the person gets the mug, that's fine. Like, they got it. There's no reason for them to leave a bad review. But as a service provider, if you're saying, like, when you make this purchase, I'm going to do your taxes for you, for example, let's say you do their taxes. So you completed your part, like, you did your service, but they didn't like the way that you did it. Or they saw, maybe they took it to someone else and someone else said, oh, they should have done this, even though you already know there's a reason why you didn't do that, right? So for some reason, they're like, oh, three stars because they missed such and such thing. So it's a little bit different when you have a service-based business. That's why it's important to set expectations. So if you want to kind of mitigate this fear of getting a bad review, the very first thing I would suggest, make sure you set that expectation. Tell people from the very start, this is what you can expect. I promise I'm going to show up on time. I promise that I'm going to care for your account, right? And listen to your questions as they come in. You are going to have a private client dashboard. Anything you need, comment to me in that dashboard, send me an email, I'm here for you. The expectation is not, okay, you're gonna come into this program and I'm going to help you lose 20 pounds. The expectation is you're gonna come into this program, I'm gonna support you every step of the way. Whatever questions you have, I've got your meal plan here. When you stay on this meal plan, it's gonna help you get the most out of this. On average, clients lose, 10 to 20 pounds. However, your experience might be different. That's what it means to set expectations. People don't care if they don't hit the exact same thing that someone, like if they saw a testimonial and they don't happen to get that exact same outcome, they don't really care. What they care about is, were my expectations met, right? So imagine if you go to a pizza restaurant, which we actually went to one recently, like a couple weeks ago, and our expectations weren't met. We read the reviews and the reviews said that it was a good spot. So when we went to the spot, our expectations were here, but then the service that we got and the experience that we got was here. And so, it's a mismatch, right? And as a service provider, it's important for you to make sure that you set those expectations so that people know what to expect and so they don't have to be disappointed. Okay. The other thing that I would suggest in this is make sure you have a customer service process or a client success process. Generally speaking, like one thing I really love is the tool ClickUp. So if you're not familiar with ClickUp, it's a project management software. It's got all the bells and whistles that you need. It can be a little bit overwhelming, which is why you should definitely go through their tutorials as you set up. But one of the things that I do is every time we get a new client, a new private client, I set up a client success progression. And so, after, one day in, after their, kickoff call, they'll get X, Y, Z. Then a week later, they'll get this. And then 6 weeks later, so we're like, as we're going through the process, we have these specific touch points, and I make sure that those touch points are already in a project management system so we can just check them off. My team can, I can, if it's a phone call, a text message, all of those things. So that's how you can also mitigate those reviews. And then the last thing I will say, which I didn't put on here, is you can also ask your legal team to include a non-disparagement clause. This is not legal advice, so I'm not really going to talk too much more about that or what it could cover, but just look up non-disparagement clause and then speak to your legal team about how that could protect you in the event of unfounded conversation. But honestly, like you can't prevent everything. You're gonna have some people who, they have something to say and they have a platform and they want to say it. The third thing that entrepreneurs find scarier than ghouls is having someone to copy you. Imagine if someone signed up for your program or didn't, and they just happened to get access to it, and then they downloaded it and uploaded it onto a site. That's called piracy. And that just means someone stole your stuff and then they put it, it's called internet piracy. They stole it and they uploaded it and put it on a different site. Or what if somebody goes to your sales page or your landing page, they like the way it looks, they like the wording, they copy everything from that page, and then they go and put it on their own website. And this is one that actually did happen to me. There was someone who was in the same coaching circles, right? So once you get started with working with different mentors and getting connected, like you'll start seeing some of the same or similar people in different programs, because people who like to invest in themselves. So you'll start seeing some of those people, you'll start making some connections. And then as you get connected with other coaches, you'll get exposed to their network, et cetera, et cetera. So this was someone who I had seen her in a group that I was a member of. Then we had signed up for a similar program. And I remember I kept seeing her stuff. It was like her and her sister were starting a business. One day I saw a social media post from her and I read through the post and I was like, wow. I was like, that sounds familiar. And I read through it again. This sounds really familiar. And I started scrolling back through my stuff and I was like, oh, it sounds familiar because it's literally the post that I just posted a couple of weeks back. There's just a couple of words tweaked here and there, but it's the same. That kind of led me down a rabbit hole because I was like, well, if she would take a social media post, like what else would she take? And I started clicking on their website and lo and behold, like my entire sales page had been copied word for word. I think I still have the screenshots of it, which if I can find them, I'll put them on the screen so that you guys can see them. And the funny thing was she had literally copied it word for word, that she even copied a misspelling. That's how I knew that it was just scraped basically and copied word for word. And I don't think I even reached out to her. I didn't have a legal team at that point to send a cease and desist. I think I just kind of like let it go. She's not around anymore, obviously, because if you don't have any creativity, it's going to be difficult for you to keep up. Because entrepreneurship is hard as it is. Like imagine if you didn't have any creative ability and you were just stealing someone's stuff, especially not in the coaching area where you have to sell yourself. Like you can't keep selling me. You can't copy everything I got and keep selling me. You got to be able to sell yourself at some point. If you're enjoying this video so far, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. And let's move on to the fourth. I got a bonus for you guys too. Surprise, surprise. Let's move on to the fourth thing that entrepreneurs find scarier than ghouls. The fourth thing is having your account stolen. Having your account stolen. Have you ever seen some of these really, really large accounts that are like 100,000 followers that suddenly they create a new account and they say, my account was stolen? This actually happened on Facebook also a couple of days ago to a coach that I respect. We're connected as colleagues. I don't think we've ever actually had a conversation though. And she was like, her account was stolen. Basically, someone was able to hijack her account. They logged into her account as her, changed her password, locked her out, and she can't get in. This has happened more often than you might think. And this one is, I would say, one of the easiest ones to mitigate. But it's a fear that every single one of you should acknowledge and put steps in place to prevent this. Because as we continue to evolve in the online world, internet world, there's more and more opportunities for bad actors to do things. And one of those things is locking you out of your own accounts. How many of you have actually tried to get in touch with someone at Facebook, for example, or at Twitter? Like, they don't have a helpline. There's millions of people who are using their platform. They wouldn't even have time for a helpline like that. The number one thing that you can and should do, and you should do it right now, well, after you watch this video, you should turn on two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication means after you put your password in, there's a second authentication method that you have to do, which might be a code inside of your phone. Like if you have a Google Authenticator, there's another app called Authy that I use. I like that one also. They might send a code to your phone number. So these are things that you can do to like mitigate that fear, because what's happening to a lot of these Instagram accounts and things that are getting hacked is the person is going in, sending they're just brute forcing to get the password. Once they get your password, especially for some of y'all who have passwords like password 123 or Apple cakes, and you don't have any capital letters, you don't have any symbols, you don't have any dots, dashes, numbers, you just have letters. They can brute force that password with computers these days in a number of hours. And as computers get smarter and smarter and faster, it's gonna be a lot easier to crack some of these passwords. Have two-factor authentication turned on. Create a password that's difficult to remember. Some of my passwords are like 15 characters long because I use a software called LastPass. LastPass will create passwords for you, and then they'll basically copy and paste it onto the website. Even with LastPass, for my most important accounts like banking accounts, these social media accounts that I don't want to let go of, even with a password, I still have two-factor authentication turned on. So that means that if I'm logging in from a new browser, a new device, a new location, I get a notification on that website. It says, hey, it looks like you're logging in from a different location. Please give us your 6-digit code or backup code or whatever the code is. I open my authenticator, which uses Face ID, so I actually have to be there to open the app, and then I'm able to type in that code. Those codes cycle and they change every couple of seconds. So that's something that if you don't have that set up already, 100%, it's a little bit of a pain in the neck. Do it, but it's important and it's valid. All right, the bonus for you guys ooh, this is a good one. Bonus. 4 things entrepreneurs find scarier than ghouls. The bonus. Living a life by default and not by design. Living a life by default and not by design. When I started creating this list, this was the one I put first. This is my biggest fear. It's always been the scariest thing for me. So the moment that I woke up and I realized that I was living my life by default, I had just graduated college with a Spanish degree. I was flipping burgers, literally working at a burger restaurant. So, that cliche when people say, okay, if you don't go to college, you'll end up flipping burgers and making fries. I was flipping burgers and making fries, and I had a college degree. And I remember I was complaining to a coworker and telling him like, well, I'm not getting paid for my Spanish degree, even though at this restaurant, there were Spanish speakers who didn't speak English, and I was absolutely using my Spanish that I knew. I still wasn't getting paid for it. I was making, I think, $10.50 at the time. And so I was complaining to a coworker, and he said, well, why don't you just go back to college? And I remember thinking, well, that's gonna be too much, or it's gonna be too hard, or there were all these excuses that were going in my head because I was so used to living my life by default. This was the very first time I made a choice to live life by design. And it's one of the reasons that I say create your own version of a lavish life, because this is what I truly believe. I truly believe when you decide, you can create your own version of a lavish life. So I decided to go back to college for my second degree, and this time I got a finance degree. Little did I know I was gonna be graduating into the greatest recession since the Great Depression. So unfortunately, even though you make a choice to live your life by design, things might not always go the way that you expected. I'm not saying that things are gonna be easy, and I'm not saying the path is gonna be smooth. What I'm saying is that it feels so much better to say, this is what I chose, and I'm doing this because I want to do it. And so that was really the very first time that I woke up. It was the first time I chose and said for myself, I'm going to do something because I want to do it. Not because I got roped into it because a friend said, hey, you should come and work at this restaurant, or my manager said, hey, do you wanna work at this retail store? No, because I chose and I decided to do it for myself. And the reason that this is one of the scariest things for me is because I can't imagine a life where I'm not doing what I'm doing now, which is choosing every single day when I wake up, what do I want to do today? What do I want to work on today? The lowest point in my life was, after graduating and being in the recession and, taking 11 months to get a job and not having anything. And it was like that low versus this high of having a business that I love, a life that I love, like that difference. I could not have gotten there if I would have continued living my life by default. If I continued living life by default, I would have likely stayed working at that restaurant, even though I hated putting that hat on every day. I hated coming home smelling like burgers and fries. I would have probably still continued working at that restaurant. I probably would have joined the military because there was someone who kept coming in who was in the Army, and she was like, hey, you're not living up to your potential. And I was actually considering it, and I probably would have default joined the Army because I wasn't choosing what do I want to do. I knew I always wanted to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to be a CEO. I knew that I had that on my path, and me living by default was not helping. And so I want to turn this back onto you. Are you truly living your life by design, or are you living by default? If you knew you were going to be successful, like what are the things that you would do right now? What steps would you take towards your goal? Do you have a goal? Are you actually writing down or being specific of the things that you want to get done? And, I feel like some of the things that I shared today is like, a little bit funny. Some of them are a little bit serious, but this one is, I'm dead serious with this one. If you are living your life by default, you will constantly feel frustrated that you're not doing what you want to do, even though you haven't defined what you want to do. So it's important to do that. And once you do that, once again, the road might not be perfect, might not be paved with gold, but you will absolutely feel that much better and feel much more fulfilled. Like I feel very fulfilled as I'm working on my business and doing the things that I desire to do. And I still, even with what I'm doing, I still feel like there's more for me to do. There's more that I want to do. But as I continue on, I understand that I get to make that choice every day. I get to decide, I get to choose, and I get to continue to create a life that I love, to create my very own version of a lavish life. So I hope you enjoyed that session. I actually recorded this as a live stream. I broadcast live every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes I'll take little snippets and share them as videos. But if you enjoyed this type of long form content, you definitely want to join us each Saturday. They're absolutely free. They're here on the channel. And if you want to watch the back catalog, you can become a channel member as well. That really does support and help. So thanks so much for joining today, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye.